All right. I'm getting my timer started. I'm Michelle Hoffman. Welcome to Liner Notes, advice that matters. Liner notes are the insight or wisdom that an artist or an author or someone who's creating anything is thinking about what is happening at the time when this creation is occurring. Michelle Hoffman's liner notes is advice that matters to make a difference in your world right now. I help improve personal and professional relationships. So whether you are looking to spark talent to create valuable teams who can meet the mission and vision of the business, or you are personally looking to attract, keep, and enjoy the right love in your life, go to relationshiping101.com and schedule some time with me, and we will improve every relationship in your life because life is better with good love in it. So welcome to Michelle Hoffman's Liner Notes, advice that matters. And here's the advice that matters to you today. I have Tamara Jefferies joining me today. We met recently, and Tamara helps women who are tired of being tired and ready to do the work to heal trauma so they can feel fully alive, fully themselves, and live the lives that they're meant to live. So Tamara, thank you for joining us on Liner Notes today. Can you give us a little bit of background, like who comes to you and what is the dream come true that you're able to help them get to when they trust in you?
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here with you. So the women that I serve are, starting from like mid to late 20s to their mid 50s. I help women who have come to a place where basically they're feeling stuck in some way, but it's this kind of impenetrable thing, this thing that they cannot shift. And usually it falls within like three types of women. You have the woman who is doing wonderfully well in her career. She's advancing, she's killing it, but she can't make a relationship stick because every time she tries to, there are these blocks, there are these impediments, there are these fears that come up that are tied to unresolved trauma. And then there's a woman who's found herself married and loves her spouse very much, but intimacy is difficult. It can bring about panic attacks. It can bring about, trauma responses. And the next thing you know, you're with your partner and you're wanting to embrace and feel this loving experience and you're crying and your partner is confused and thinking they've done something wrong. And it's to do with all of this unresolved trauma. And the third would be a woman who, try as she might, just can't seem to get anything going. It just feels like nothing's working on any level. And she's feeling this thing that's like nagging her, like, something is seriously wrong here, but I can't figure out what it is. And that's usually this unfinished business that's still hanging out, that's keeping her stuck. So those are the women that I work with.
So whether it's they're successful professionally, but in their personal lives, something is limiting their ability to actually open up enough to connect appropriately, or they may have achieved that, attracted the right person in their life, but then once they get there, there's some door that's still slammed shut, or maybe it's a cement wall, or they just can't get there in the first place and they can't figure out why. Exactly. So you're actually able to help these women gain an understanding of what is stopping them from living and feeling freely, fully in their lives.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Amazing. What kind of, well, I'll ask you that in a minute, but can you give us an example of someone in particular without getting too specific, just about someone who might come to you, an example of what she might have been facing and how you helped her through that?
Yeah, of course. So a lot of my clients are either survivors of sexual assault or childhood sexual abuse. Or some kind of physical abuse. And I had a client who had unfortunately experienced all of that, and from a very young age. So she was married and she was having just tremendous blocks in terms of opening up to her husband and feeling safe in her own body, feeling connected to her own like arousal patterns, and just feeling comfortable just in her own skin, you know? She was experiencing a lot of these mysterious pains and a lot of inflammation in her body. And just as we started working together somatically, so I work somatically with people, so that's the mind body connection. So I'm trying to get women into their bodies to understand what's there, what's holding them back, what unresolved trauma or emotional wound is still living within their musculature, within their nervous system, right? And so as I'm guiding her through these exercises, what we notice is week by week, this inflammation that she was feeling was diminishing. And week by week, she was shrinking in size, like before my eyes. And she's like, I'm not losing weight. It's just the inflammation is going down.
Yeah.
You know, the pain was diminishing. And as we worked on undoing these trauma responses around intimacy, she found herself being able to enjoy being intimate with her husband again, for not even again, it was like for the first time. They'd been married for over 10 years. And that was just a revelation. Like, she didn't realize that sexual intimacy could be a joyful thing. And I was like, that's so sad that you didn't have that knowing.
Right. Knowing it. Then she's like, we got things to do. Look at it's like smelling something good for the first time or seeing color. It can be so fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
How did you get to this work? What's your story, or how did you find yourself here?
Yeah, so I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and it's something that I didn't start working on until my mid-20s. And at that time, I realized, to my dismay, that many of my closest girlfriends were all survivors of either sexual assault or childhood sexual abuse. And it was just mind-blowing to me how many women I personally knew who had gone through this. And I just made up my mind that I was going to be part of the solution and try and help women heal. And so I just dove into as many trainings and certifications, and I got my master's in somatic psychology. I did numerous trainings to get certified in working with trauma. But I knew that I wanted to work with it holistically. So I didn't just do that. Like, I also became certified as a yoga teacher. I became certified as a massage therapist. I do a form of energy healing. So it's like, I wanted to be really like a one-stop shop. Any woman who's dealing with these things could come to me and we would find our point of entry, you know, because it's not just something, it's not something that just talk therapy will do, or it's not something that just doing yoga will do. It's something that really, it affects all levels. And so we need to be able to approach it from all levels.
And discovering where someone is at so that you know what to help uncover in a safe way, so that there's so much stability when one thing is released or uncovered, that it's like, oh, I can handle that. But if you suddenly are just like, all right, we're ready for the world, it's like,
no, exactly. We have to go in these really small steps. There's this word called titrating. Titrating means to take things in small bits, you know, just a little bit at a time, so that the body can acclimate. Because if you try and go in there like guns blazing, you're going to overwhelm the nervous system. The woman's going to shut down, like nothing's going to happen. So yeah, you got to take it in small steps.
So this is really fascinating. What are some of the tips and tools or techniques that you use to titrate, to encourage someone to feel safe enough and be vulnerable, to share their open heart and allow their body to process something like this, to relieve and release it? How do you do this?
Well, the foundation for me is always connecting women with her breath, because our breath is, I think of it as like the gateway, you know.
It is.
Our emotions are tied to our breath. The moment that we start to shift emotions, our breath is also shifting, like our breathing pattern is shifting at the same time. And so that's the first thing, is to get women to start noticing their breath. So I always start each session with us breathing together and inviting her to start noticing what's going on in her body. So a lot of what I do is also mindfulness practicing, and just getting women to start noticing without judgment what's happening in their bodies. And as she becomes more comfortable, just noticing, like in these first few minutes of our session, what's going on, she's better able to notice these things changing throughout the session. If she starts to get emotional, or if she starts to feel shut down, like it will become more present to her that these things are happening. And from there, the next step, and this is probably the hardest thing, is just to be with what is. Don't try and shut it down, just be with it. And I think that's the hardest thing in the healing process, is just letting yourself feel your feelings. Don't being, not being afraid of them, not feeling like you have to change them, whether you're bad for having them or any of that. And so those are the first two things, really, is just like getting connected to our sensations, getting connected to the breath, so that we can feel what's coming up, and then allowing ourselves to feel what's coming up. And one thing that I do, one exercise that I like to do with my clients, is the yes, no exercise, because a lot of women don't have a felt sense of boundaries in their bodies.
Very nice.
So I like to walk them through this exercise in which I say, okay, I'm going to ask you a question that you will always, always answer yes to. And so, like, for me, I'm like, ask me if I want some tiramisu. Tamara, do you want some tiramisu? Yes, always. And there is a felt sense in my body of what that feels like. It's like joy just bursting out of my heart. Like, I would love some tiramisu.
Yeah.
And so I ask a woman that question. And the next question is, what's something that you will always say no to? Like, I will always say no to watching a violent movie. Like, I don't want to see that.
Okay.
And so, it's like when I am offered that option to watch a violent movie, I can feel it inside, like everything just closes up. And so there's that felt sense, that differentiation of like the openness of joy and yes, and that closing up of no. And once we do that exercise, it's like a light bulb goes off, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I've been saying yes to so many things I didn't really want to, because I didn't have that kind of sensation in my body that told me, like, I don't want to be doing this right now.
What a good way to open a conversation or a practice. One, taking a breath and being able to control your breath. It's the quickest way to get control in an out of control situation.
Oh, yeah.
And there must be a sense of, I don't have control of this, which is what's caused the situation, because they don't put themselves in this situation. Then, acknowledging where you're at, being in the present moment, and understanding what it feels like to say yes to something you really mean yes to, and saying yes to something that you don't wish to say yes to. That's a really profound exercise. And then the reverse of saying no to something that you do want versus what you don't want. That's empowering too. So getting control in an out of control situation and immediately empowering someone is a super way to build trust and give someone a sense of confidence of, oh, I can do this. So bring us some more. What's next?
What's next in terms of what?
Well, what other tips and tools or techniques do you share with your clients to help empower them through trauma to a healing point where they can relax into who they are and enjoy life physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually again?
Yeah. The next important one is, once we've been triggered, like, so now you have these like bits of information about yourself, like what your breath is doing, how your body is responding to your environment. You're noticing these things happening. So at some point, something might happen that triggers you. And understanding that once we're triggered, we need about 20 minutes to come down off of that. Like, the amygdala is set off. This is something I like to teach, about neuroscience. It's just like the amygdala is the center in our brain that has like so much information that has to do with our fight flight responses.
Right.
And once it's set off, it needs about 20 minutes to come back down. So when you feel that, you've been triggered into that, one of my clients calls it going red. It's like she can't see anything. She just goes red.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you need to give yourself a good 20 minutes to calm back down so that you can come back to a place where you're in contact with your breath. You can think clearly. You can get that gauge of what's going on in your body. Because when you're in that space, you're thinking fight, or flee. Like that's it. I'm sorry, fight, flight, or freeze.
Freeze. I was going to say there's paralysis and there's an option.
Yeah.
Again, it's a really profound tool. And it goes back to following this process that you're setting up for us on a very quick way, because one deep breath, even just one quick breath, no one is going to notice if you stop and take one deep breath.
Right.
And what's going to shift in your brain is if your amygdala is triggered and all of these thoughts back here are like, what should I do in this crisis scenario? One deep breath will switch the decision-making position in your brain to your prefrontal cortex, where this is where the logical functions can start to make decisions for you. And if you've got the luxury of a 20-minute, I would call it a timeout or a time down to separate yourself and go, let me make sense of what's going on around here. Sometimes we don't have that luxury, but one deep breath would certainly switch things for you, just like Tamara's saying. And then understanding immediately, how does this feel in your body? I separate it. So in your mind, what's making sense if you have that logic in that moment? What are your emotions telling you in your heart? What does your instincts share with you in your gut? What is your body, as Tamara is saying? When you know what yes to yes feels like and what no to no things feel like, and if they're in alignment, you're good. But if not, that's a GPS. Right. That something needs to shift. Right. All right. So we connect with breath. We be with what is. We know what it feels like in our body. And we also know that if it's fight, flight, or freeze, we should probably take a breath or get into a breathing practice and give ourselves about 20 minutes to pull our thoughts and of the situation together to move forward.
Yes. Yes. I do think that, you know, and like you said, we don't always have that luxury of 20 minutes, but I like to say like at least 3 breaths, give yourself at least 3 breaths. And what we want to learn here is how to respond rather than react. So, you know, we want to give ourselves the time to give a fully, if it's not fully thought out, but a fully felt response rather than this just knee-jerk reaction that's, you know, steeped in our past responses.
Beautiful. All right. So if we've got control of our breath, we understand how we're feeling in our body, we're being with what is, and we're taking the time to respond versus react. What comes next?
Well, a couple of things. You have options at this point. You know, that's the thing, that you create this gap where you have options. And I like to help women first, before they verbalize that response, to really get deeply into their bodies. So I teach them grounding exercises to help them. I use the word anchor. You want to anchor into your body and anchor into the felt sense of what you're experiencing in this moment. And when you do that, and I teach them just very brief, like grounding exercises that can be done in just a matter of like 3 to 5 breaths. But once you do that and you feel grounded in your body, then you're able to say whatever needs to be said in that moment. And it's always, of course, I encourage the use of I statements, you know, to help.
Like I
feel, across, I feel, I want, I don't want, I like, I don't like. So that we take ownership of what we're saying, and come from a non-violent place. And after that, you know, it's really an invitation to approach this situation differently than what we've done before. You know, if it's been our knee-jerk response to just go off on someone and storm out the room, we now have this new information. We have a moment of breathing. We have, you know, our wherewithal to sit and be with the feelings in our bodies without judgment, so that we can tolerate them. And just speak from that place. If I'm feeling really triggered right now, or I'm feeling really angry right now, or I'm feeling really disappointed right now, and just go from there.
Even in that kind of place, I mean, I tend to veer toward the positive. And I would see an opportunity, if you have the luxury of even the 3 breaths, to determine what do you like, I feel, I like, I love. If you can start sentences like that, that changes the energy completely in a scenario. It depends on the situation that you're facing, of course.
It does.
But starting with the positive to, calm down your, whoever it is you're discussing something with to get through.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, these are all, the scenarios that you're setting up sound like confrontational ones.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best ways that I've been able to help people through confrontation, because people will stand their ground and then they get stuck in it.
Yes.
And then there's no intersection,
Mm-hmm.
even with the full intention of both sides going, I want it to work. I want it to work too.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you get off into the sunset? Sorry, the hand puppets come out.
Okay.
But yeah. And what I've discovered is to be able to find a way through that doesn't put anyone in a situation where everyone wants to be right. We want to look good. We want to make sense of what's going on. And if we can find a through line to go, well, if we can both agree, if we can't agree on this, but we do agree with the bigger picture of what we really want to have happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if we agree with that, how do we go from where we are here to there? And maybe we put a numeric value on the challenge that we're facing. This is actually a level 1 problem, but our relationship is of level 10 value.
Yeah.
So let's not allow a level 1 problem to disrupt a level 10 scenario.
Yeah, that's
so
great.
Finding a way through that, if it's appropriate, and then checking in with your breath, staying with it, realizing, does this a yes that feels like a yes or a no that feels like a no? Because then you can come to this decision in an empowered way versus being a victim of a scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's beautiful. So if somebody is feeling tired of being tired and they know that they've been through major challenges in their lives and they don't get the kind of help to empower them from somebody like you, what kind of obstacles or pitfalls might people run into?
Gosh, there's so many. I feel like the most extreme emotional outcome to that kind of thing is just being in a place of deep despair, where it just feels like there's nothing that's ever going to work and there's no point. And I feel like that is the most disempowered place we can be. But below that, I mean, it can show up in our jobs, in our, poor functioning at work, just being in jobs that we don't like forever and not finding a way to get out and find things that are satisfying for us. It can be, of course, being stuck in relationships that aren't good for you. That can definitely be a pitfall. But it also can look like taking advice from those who are trying to do, they want the best for you, but it might not be the best for you because not everyone's been in your lived situation, your lived experience. And I think one of the biggest pitfalls is also not having the self-trust to know, that something's not right and that you do have the power to fix it, but you just don't trust yourself. There's been too much of an assault on your self-worth or your sense of knowing that you just don't trust the decisions that you're making.
So if you're a woman who perhaps is very successful professionally, but personally you can't get comfortable into a relationship, or maybe you're in a relationship and you can't relax into opening up in an intimate way, or you're a woman who can't get to that point in a relationship to even have that opportunity, what would be a clear signal to someone that they may have been trying to do this on their own? They may be looking to advice from people who, as you were saying, care about them, but may not have the tools and techniques and the experience and the knowledge base behind them to help them through it. What would be a clear signal that it's time that they are not doing it on their own and their precious life is so valuable that they should reach out to somebody like you, Tamara?
Definitely. I feel like, again, like that biggest thing is if they're in a place of despair. But before they reach that place of despair, if they're just in a place of frustration and they've had enough self-awareness to go, you know what, there's a pattern here. I'm
Mm.
noticing the same outcome has been going on for years and I'm really sick of it. Like that's usually the point.
And how you want to share some contact information of how someone reach out to you directly so that they don't have to, you don't have to feel this long sense of despair. There is something more. And you can reach out to Tamara Jefferies by
Thank
going
you.
to.
Yeah. My email address is Tamara at tamarajefferies.com. That's TAMARAJEFFERIES.
You can spell it.
And my website is growandthrivewellness.com. You can also contact me through the contact page of growandthrivewellness.com.
And you've got a program that you've designed and developed to help women through this, and you offer coaching as well.
Mhm.
And it's my understanding that anyone listening to this could have a special gift with the first program or the first chapter or
Right,
the first unit, is that what you're calling it, of your course,
right.
that Tamara is willing to gift you the first unit of her course so that you really get a feel of what it's like to work with Tamara, as well as to know how to connect with your breath, how to be okay with what is and just be with what is, to understand in your body what yes to yes feels like, what yes to something that you don't feel like saying yes to feel actually feels like, and then the reverse, what no means when you feel and mean no, and what no feels like when you don't actually mean no. So creating appropriate boundaries for yourself. um, Also knowing what to do when you are triggered and how to move through that so that you can come back to balance and make decisions in a really healthy way and respond versus reacting, as well as getting grounded and anchoring and literally knowing the right words to choose in a situation so that you get the outcome that you're looking for. So Tamara, if that is resonating with people, then go ahead and reach out to Tamara at tamarajefferies.com, or go to her website at growandthrivewellness.com. Tamara, thank you so much for joining us on
Thank
Advice
you.
That Matters.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.